Hello everyone, welcome to another Versus Video Deck Tech. I am BBD and I'm joined by...
Chris Van Meter.
Indeed, and we are looking at Bant Super Friends, as CVM would call it. It is essentially Bant-colored planeswalkers, creatures, and spells.
It's mostly planeswalker, Bant, aggro, mid-range.
Tempo control.
Tempo control.
Yep. So that's what Wizards of the Coast would name this deck. So basically this deck is mono mythic rares. We have two actual rares and one uncommon. Everything else is a mythic, but it's basically just a hodgepodge of the best cards in these colors is pretty much what it is.
Yep.
And the idea is you want to just kind of use Sylvan Caryatid and Kiora's Follower to kind of ramp yourself up the curve to some of these powerful endgame cards. And basically when you're playing cards like Sylvan and Kiora's Follower, you want to have a lot of good 4-drops in your deck because these guys ramp you directly to 4. So that's kind of the key is to have good 4s. If you look at like the red-green monsters deck, they have like Polykranos and Xenagos and even Gorklan Rampager. Like they're real heavy in the 4-drop slot, and the deck is built like that for a reason. It's because of cards like Sylvan Caryatid. So here we have Jace and Kiora are our 4-drops we want to ramp into. Jace, we already know how powerful Jace is. Kiora, a little different. This is a new card, so we haven't had a chance to play with it yet. But I actually think that Kiora is pretty good. I've actually played with this deck a number of times, and I was pretty impressed with Kiora. Yeah. Better than I expected it to be. One of the things that Kiora can do is her -1 helps ramp you directly into Elspeth the next turn. So you can play this on turn 3, use the -1, put a second land in play, and then the next turn you can play yet another land and play Elspeth. So that's one thing that Kiora can do. And even if Kiora dies in the meantime, like ramping you to Elspeth a turn earlier and fogging your opponent's attack is still very good. Kiora is kind of a planeswalker that, almost a lot like Jace, I'm not too worried about keeping it alive. I just want to get a lot of value out of it and use it to push myself from the mid game to the end game. And Jace and Kiora both do that very well. And they're also both very good if they're left in play for a long time too. So there's a lot of upside there. Kiora's +1 I like a lot because if your opponent has just one creature in play, you can lock it down indefinitely. It's almost kind of like a Johnny Vengeance in that regard. Also, the +1 does get things like Mutavault because it's any permanent. It doesn't have to be a creature. So you can also hit like a Chandra Pyromaster too and prevent that from doing things. So there's actually a lot of like unique interactions with Kiora. You can get like a Perforos too. There's a lot of cool things you can do with Kiora. So I think this card's very good. We have Detention Sphere just as an all-around answer card. We're playing so many creatures, so we can't play Supreme Verdict. And Detention Sphere is one of our only real answers to a lot of cards. So we do lean very heavily on Detention Sphere. But the overall power level of this deck is so high that sometimes we can win games through whatever our opponent's doing. It just doesn't matter, even if we don't ever draw a Detention Sphere. And one of the ways we can do that is with these two cards here. Archangel of Thune and Angel of Serenity. Archangel of Thune, I think, is going to be one of the better cards in Standard post Born of the Gods, mostly because of the presence of cards like Drown in Sorrow and Bioblight. Two powerful new removal spells that a lot of black decks are going to adopt, especially mono black. Neither of them kill Archangel of Thune. 4 toughness is like the new, I don't know, 4 toughness. Like it's just the new thing because of Bioblight. I think a lot of creatures that have more than 3 toughness are going to be very good because of that card. Archangel being one of them, and also another one is Brimaz, which we played in our video last week. We saw how good it was there. I think it's also good here too. And then the last thing is we have Angel of Serenity. And Angel of Serenity is a card that kind of is overlooked at this point, but is very powerful against other devotion strategies. So and when you're ramping with like Kiora and all these guys, you can actually get to an Angel of Serenity on like turn 5, where it really takes over the game. And because we have powerful cards like Brimaz and Archangel of Thune, even if we're not playing against another devotion deck, if we play like a Brimaz, they kill it. We play an Archangel of Thune, they kill it. And then we play Angel of Serenity and get both of those creatures back. Now if they kill our Angel of Serenity, we still have 2 follow-up threats. And each of those threats individually is strong enough to win the game. So it really taxes your opponent's resources. And then lastly, we have one of the most powerful combinations in Standard, which is two basic land islands, a basic land plains, a bunch of these other lands, and then Sphinx's Revelation. So
it's a pretty intricate combination. Sometimes you have to maneuver the cards in a particular way to get there.
Yeah, it's
but
actually
Sphinx's Revelation is still good.
Yeah, it's a hard combo to navigate. You have to really time things in the right order. Like, do I tap the lands first, then cast Sphinx's Revelation, or do I announce Sphinx's Revelation and then tap the lands? It's real hard. But the basic point is that Sphinx's Revelation is still really good. So, and we have ramp spells to really take advantage of it. So, and another thing we got to that I forgot to mention is Temple of Plenty and Temple of Enlightenment, which really help out the mana for a deck like this. Previously, this deck only had Temple of Mystery, and now that we have two other temples, the mana is so much better. And I'm not sure exactly how to build the mana base yet. That's something that will come with experience and playing with the deck, but it is nice to have access to more scry lands. Especially with Kiora, you can double scry in a turn or something. Yes. So pretty sweet. But yeah, this is the main deck, and let's go ahead and jump over to the sideboard. One of the most powerful sideboard cards that Green has to offer is Mistcutter Hydra. Not only is it a beast against Mono Blue Devotion, but it's also very good against any of the control decks as well. Mistcutter lets you set up a scenario where you play out a bunch of your cards. You kind of go back and forth a bit, maybe like you're both, Revelation or something. And then at some point where their guard is down, you just play a massive Mistcutter and just hit them for a chunk, or just kill one of their planeswalkers, or do something. So Mistcutter really offers a lot against other control decks. Last Breath, one of the best removal spells in Standard right now. I don't imagine that changes too much with Born of the Gods. Still very good at killing Night Veil Specters and Master of Waves and the like. And Last Breath is also pretty sweet in combination with Jace. If your opponent attacks your Jace with a Brimaz, you can trigger the ability.
Or an Archangel of Thune.
Or an Archangel of Thune. You can trigger the ability. It becomes a 2-power creature, and then you can Last Breath it. So that's a nifty interaction. Another card is Tristani. I don't know how easy Tristani is going to be to cast with the mana base. We have 3 islands in there, so there are 3 lands in our deck that don't cast Tristani. But we do have a bunch of... we do have 2 mana creatures that basically can tap for any color, so that'll help a lot. But basically, Tristani is a card that is very powerful in the right circumstances, and it's a card that hasn't really seen any play for a long period of time. But I think this deck takes good advantage of it. For one, we have the combination of Tristani and Archangel of Thune, where anytime you play a creature with a Tristani and an Archangel of Thune in play, you get to trigger Tristani to gain a life, then trigger Archangel to put a counter on all your creatures. So if you have a Tristani and an Archangel of Thune, and you +1 an Elspeth, you get to pump all your creatures 3 times. Or if you attack with a Brimaz and you put a cat in play, you get to pump your entire team. There's a lot of pretty sweet interactions between Tristani and Archangel of Thune. I think that combination is very powerful against any kind of creature deck. So I think Tristani is something to look out for there.
Plus, anytime you get to populate a 9/9 Kraken token, it's got to be a good feeling.
Oh, yeah, and gain 9 life, both times. Yeah, that's called living the dream. That might be a little too much. But Negate, I think Negate is really good against basically blue-white control. And that's essentially it. There might be a couple other decks, maybe some of the Assemble the Legion type decks, but mostly blue-white control is where I want Negate. And
it's also not bad against green-red monsters. They have a lot of planeswalkers, and their real only answer to Archangel Thune is Mizium Mortars, and that gives you an answer for that too.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. And I like Negate more than something like Dispel or Gainsay, because I think Elspeth Sun's Champion is one of the best cards in Standard. Also, one of the cards that's hard for decks like this to generally beat a lot of times. So I don't want to have a Gainsay in my hand and my opponent to play an Elspeth. So I'd rather have Negate.
Not going to have a good time.
No, not a good time at all. Having Negate over Gainsay means that we're a little weak to an Aetherling or something, but I think in general this strategy is good against Aetherling, and we have 2 Aetherlings of our own, so hopefully we win the Aetherling war against decks like that. Aetherling is just another thing card to come in against control decks, where a lot of our other creatures just don't really cut it. Everything else is just going to die to Supreme Verdict or get countered or whatever. Then having Aetherling as a way to supplement our planeswalkers against them is very powerful.
Yep.
So we might play an Elspeth, they have to counter it. we play a Jace, they counter it, and now we get to play Aetherling. They don't have any more counters, and the game's over. Whereas if that Aetherling was instead like an Archangel Thune, they can just be like, sure, Supreme Verdict. So it's important to have cards like Aetherling. And then Revoke Existence is going to be really good, I think. It hits Underworld Connections and Erebos out of the black deck, so it's very powerful there. Detention Sphere, Pithing Needle. There's a lot of cards that are being played that Revoke is good against. Chain to the Rocks, Hammer, Perforos, etc. And I like it more than Glare of Heresy in this deck because we have Detention Sphere, so we already have an answer to like something like Elspeth, and I'd rather just have a Revoke Existence to deal with their Detention Spheres and stuff that can also hit like Underworld Connections. And then one Plummet is just for basically Big D, Desecration Demon. It's also good against Nightveil Spectre too, but I think it's worth having just one sideboard slot that's just for mono black really. And I think Plummet is very good there since cards like Desecration Demon can sometimes be a big problem for us.
Yep.
But yep, that's it for this deck. Hopefully it performs pretty well going against mono black Devotion. So sometimes mono black can just beat the crap out of you regardless of what you're playing, and hopefully we have enough cool cards to put it to them.